In this lesson, we're going to solve right triangles, and how we do that is each of the following steps we will use once. So we have each step use once. And so our first step, or one of the steps, doesn't necessarily mean that we'll do these in order, but to find the third side, we will use Pythagorean theorem. And that is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And then to find the third angle, we know the sum of the angles is 180 degrees. So we will subtract the two we know to figure out the third. And then we will find a second side or a second angle. We're going to use SOHCAHTOA. And again, we might need the inverse. If we're looking for our angle instead of a side. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and do what we've done before, which is drawing our triangles and labeling all of our pieces, and then using using each of the three different types up above to finish finding all of the rest of the parts that we need. So there's our right triangle. We know that's C. Been making that A and B, labeling A in this case, and labeling little a across from it with 16.8. So let's go ahead and start with trig. So we can go opposite and let's find our adjacent. Let's make this our little b there. Because again, we're trying to find everything, all the missing sides and angles. So it doesn't kind of really matter what you start with. We could find the hypotenuse. But let's go ahead and just use B here. So we have opposite and adjacent, which is tangent. 34 is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. And then we'll cross multiply. So B times tangent 34 is equal to 16.8. And then we will divide both sides by tangent 34, and so we wind up with B equaling 24.9. And then to find angle B, we're going to take 180 minus 90 minus 34, and that is going to give us angle B is 56 degrees. So we have one thing left we have to do, and that's Pythagorean theorem. So we know that this over here is 24.9. So we have both the legs. So it's going to be a 16.8 squared plus a 24.9 squared. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, which we don't know C. So now we're going to go ahead and have C equaling the square root of 16.8 squared plus 24.9 squared. And we can go ahead and type that into our calculator as long as we use parentheses. Otherwise, you can do 16 squared, enter, plus 24 squared, in parentheses, enter, and then square root that answer. But you'll get 30.0 for C. So we're going to do that for the next few examples. Again, drawing our triangle and labeling. Little a this time 6.5, little c this time 14.8. We don't have an angle. So if we want to figure out what an angle is, let's say we want to figure out what angle A is, we are going to then have opposite and hypotenuse, or sine of A is equal to 6.5 over 14.8. So we're going to use the inverse. And typing that into our calculator, 26.1 degrees for angle A. And then we can use Pythagorean theorem. Since we have two of the sides, we can figure out what the third side is, the little b there. 6.5 squared plus b squared is equal to 14.8 squared. And we will subtract 14.8 squared minus 6.5 squared, and then we'll do our square root. And get 13.3 for b. And lastly is our little angles. We want to figure out what the angles are, and that's 180 degrees minus 90 and minus the 26.1 to get capital B. So angle B is 63.9 degrees. So I want you to try number 3. You're going to draw your triangle. You're going to label what pieces that you do know, and then you're going to use trig. You're going to use Pythagorean theorem, and you're going to subtract the two angles from 180. So go ahead and try number 3. Push pause and then push play to check when you have it all done. All right, double check your answer for number 3 I used sine to figure out what little a there was, and that is 7.7. And then using the fact that the triangle adds up to 180 for all of its angles, we can figure out that angle B is 63. And then using Pythagorean theorem, now that we know that the other side there is 7.7 and then 17, and we subtract 7.7 squared from 17 squared, and then do the square root to get B as 15.2. So for our last one, again, drawing our right triangle, C is always our right angle there, A and B. Across from capital A is little a, across from B there is 17.3. So if we were trying to find angle A, we have the O and the A, which means we're going to use tangent A is equal to 14.5 over 17.3. So A is going to be equal to the inverse of tangent of 14.5 over 17.3 in our calculator to get 40 degrees. And if angle A is 40 degrees, we can go ahead and subtract that to get 50 degrees for angle B. And then Pythagorean theorem. We have the two A and B, and so we're going to then find C with Pythagorean theorem. So square root of 14.5 squared plus 17.3 squared is equal to 22.6.